Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag and looked at the broken atmospheric processor in front of him. The machine had been making strange noises for 3 days now, and the mining station needed it working or everyone would have trouble breathing the thin air of this planet. He grabbed his toolbox and headed out into the cold morning air. The mining station on Kepler 442b was not much to look at. A few metal buildings, some big machines, and lots of empty space, filled with red dirt and strange blue rocks. Jake had been working here for 2 years, fixing anything that broke down. It was lonely work, but he liked machines better than people most days. He walked toward the northern sector, where the old mining tunnels had been closed after an accident last year. Nobody went there anymore, but the atmospheric processor was close by, and Jake needed to check the pipes that ran through that area. The wind was cold and carried a metallic smell from the mines. As Jake worked on the processor, he heard something strange. It sounded like a low moaning, almost like an animal in pain. He stopped working and listened carefully. The sound came again, deeper this time, echoing from somewhere underground. Jake looked around but saw nothing except empty red ground and old mining equipment. He followed the sound to a pile of rocks and broken metal beams near the entrance to Tunnel 7. The moaning was louder here, definitely coming from inside the collapsed tunnel. Jake had been told never to go into the old tunnels because they were dangerous, but something about that sound made him want to help. Jake found a small opening between the rocks and shined his flashlight inside. The tunnel was dark and filled with debris, but he could see it went back quite far. The moaning sound came again, and this time Jake heard something else too. Small squeaking noises like baby animals. He squeezed through the opening and crawled into the tunnel. His flashlight beam danced around the dark space as he moved forward. The air smelled strange, like hot metal and something else he could not identify. Jake kept moving toward the sounds. What he found made him stop breathing for a moment. In a large chamber where the tunnel opened up, a huge bronze-colored dragon lay trapped under several metal support beams. The dragon was at least 20 feet long, with scales that caught his flashlight beam like copper coins. Her back legs were twisted and clearly broken, pinned under the heavy beams. But that was not the most amazing thing. Around the dragon, 3 tiny creatures moved on shaky legs. They were baby dragons, no bigger than house cats, with bright scales of gold, red, and blue. They squeaked and chirped as they tried to stay close to their mother. The mother dragon's eyes opened when Jake's light hit her. They were deep green and filled with intelligence and pain. She lifted her great head slightly and made a low growling sound, trying to position herself between Jake and her babies, even though she could barely move. Jake had never seen a real dragon before. Everyone knew about them from the news feeds. Proud creatures from the Draconic Empire who thought they were better than humans. But this dragon did not look proud. She looked hurt and scared and desperate to protect her young. He took a step closer and the dragon growled louder, baring, teeth as long as his fingers. The baby dragons squeaked and huddled closer to their mother. Jake could see that all of them were too thin, especially the babies. Their scales looked dull and their movements were weak. Jake slowly backed away and crawled out of the tunnel. His mind raced as he walked back to the station. What was a dragon doing here? How long had she been trapped? Why was there no one looking for her? Dragons were supposed to be powerful and have big families that took care of each other. Back at the station, Jake found Pete Collins in the main building. Pete was the foreman and had been working mining stations for 15 years. He looked up from his coffee when Jake walked in. "You look like you saw a ghost," Pete said. Jake sat down heavily. "Pete, what would you say if I told you there was a dragon trapped in Tunnel 7? Pete laughed. "I'd say you've been breathing too much processor coolant. Dragons don't come to places like this." "I'm serious," Jake said. "A big one, with babies. She's hurt bad and they all look starving." Pete's smile faded. "You're really serious?" Jake nodded. "Her legs are crushed under some beams. The babies can barely stand up." Pete was quiet for a long moment. Then he called over Lisa Hayes, the security chief, and Greg Baker, the surveyor. Jake told his story again while they all stared at him. "This is bad," Lisa said finally. "If there's really a dragon out there, we have to report it to Colonial Authority. They handle all alien contact." "What will they do?" Jake asked. "Probably move them to some research facility," Greg said. "Study them." Jake thought about the mother dragon's green eyes and how she had tried to protect her babies even though she was dying. "What if she doesn't survive being moved? What if the babies don't make it?" "That's not our problem," Lisa said. "We're not equipped to deal with dragons. We barely keep this place running as it is." But Jake knew it was his problem now. He had looked into those intelligent eyes and seen something that reminded him of every hurt animal he had ever wanted to help. The fact that this animal was a 20-foot dragon with teeth and claws did not change that feeling. That night, Jake lay in his bunk thinking about the dragon family. He wondered how long they had been trapped, how they had gotten there, and why no other dragons had come looking for them. Most of all, he wondered if he was brave enough to do what he was thinking about doing. The next morning, Jake loaded his toolbox with different tools than usual. Instead of wrenches and welders, he packed medical supplies, food bars, and some water containers. He was going back to Tunnel 7, and this time he was going to try to help. Jake crawled back through the tunnel opening with his supplies, moving slowly so he would not startle the dragons. The mother dragon watched him approach with those same intelligent green eyes. She did not growl this time, but her body stayed tense and ready to fight if needed. The three baby dragons looked even weaker than yesterday. They barely lifted their heads when Jake's flashlight swept over them. The golden one was lying on its side, breathing in quick, shallow gasps. Jake's heart sank as he realized how little time they might have left. He set his supplies down just out of reach of the mother dragon's teeth and spoke in a soft voice. "I want to help you," he said, knowing she probably could not understand his words, but hoping she might understand his tone. "I'm not going to hurt your babies." The dragon tilted her massive head slightly, studying him. Jake could see intelligence in her eyes, but also confusion. She was trying to figure out what this strange human wanted. Jake opened a water container and slowly pushed it toward her. The dragon sniffed at it suspiciously, then lowered her great head and drank deeply. She had probably not had clean water in weeks. When she finished drinking, she looked at Jake with what might have been gratitude. Next, Jake tried to feed the babies. He broke up some nutrition bars and held out small pieces. The baby dragons were too weak to be afraid. The golden one took a piece from his hand with a tiny mouth that felt like warm leather. The red baby followed, then the blue one. They ate hungrily, making small, happy sounds. The mother dragon watched this feeding with growing amazement. This human was giving food to her children when he could have just walked away. Jake could see her confusion changing into something else. Maybe the beginning of trust. Over the next few hours, Jake studied the situation. The metal beams pinning the dragon's legs were heavy support structures from the old mining operation. They would need serious equipment to move them. But first, Jake needed to figure out how to treat the dragon's injuries without making them worse. He had some medical training from his time in the colonial service, but dragon anatomy was completely different from human anatomy. Still, broken bones were broken bones, and infections were infections. Jake could see that the dragon's legs had been crushed weeks ago and were healing wrong. There were also signs of infection around the wounds. Jake crawled back out of the tunnel and returned to the station. He needed help, but he also knew that Pete, Lisa, and Greg would want to call Colonial Authority immediately. Instead, Jake went to see Dr. Amanda Foster, the station medic. Amanda was a thin woman with gray hair who had been patching up miners for 10 years. She looked up from her medical records when Jake walked into the clinic. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to keep it quiet for now," Jake said. Amanda raised an eyebrow. "What kind of trouble are you in, Jake?" Jake told her about the dragons, watching her face change from disbelief to amazement to worry. When he finished, Amanda was quiet for a long time. "You want me to help you treat a dragon?" she said finally. "Her legs are badly broken and infected. She's been trapped for weeks. The babies are starving." "Jake, I don't know anything about dragon medicine. I barely keep you minors from killing yourselves with your own stupidity. But you know about bones and infections and basic care," Jake said. "And those babies are going to die if we don't do something soon." Amanda looked at him for a long moment. "This could end both our careers, you know. If colonial authority finds out we treated dragons without reporting them first, then we better make sure they don't die," Jake said. Amanda sighed and started gathering medical supplies. "I must be as crazy as you are." That afternoon, Jake and Amanda crawled into the tunnel together. Amanda's first sight of the dragon family left her speechless. She had seen pictures of dragons in news feeds, but seeing one in person was completely different. Even injured and trapped, the mother dragon radiated power and dignity. "My God," Amanda whispered. "She's magnificent." The dragon seemed to sense that Amanda was there to help. She allowed the doctor to examine her crushed legs, though she kept her head positioned where she could watch every movement. Amanda worked carefully, cleaning infected wounds and checking for broken bones. "This is amazing," Amanda said as she worked. "Her healing rate is much faster than human normal. These bones should have taken months to mend this much, but it's only been weeks. And look at this tissue regeneration." While Amanda treated the mother dragon, Jake focused on the babies. He had brought better food this time, high-protein paste, and some mineral supplements that miners used. The baby dragons ate eagerly, their eyes becoming brighter with each meal. Jake started talking to them as he fed them, giving them names in his mind. The golden one became Ember because of how her scales caught the light. The red one became Spark because of his feisty personality. The blue one became Blaze because she seemed the most curious about everything around her. Over the next week, Jake and Amanda made daily trips to the tunnel. Amanda brought better medical equipment each time, and Jake worked on figuring out how to move the heavy beams that trapped the mother dragon. The dragon, who Jake had started thinking of as Kaylin after hearing her make deep sounds that seemed like a name, grew stronger each day. Her infections cleared up, and her broken bones began healing properly thanks to Amanda's care and the dragon's natural healing abilities. But moving the beams required heavy equipment from the mining station, and that meant involving other people. Jake knew he could not keep this secret much longer. The decision was made for him when Claire Murphy, the station administrator, caught him loading medical supplies into his toolbox. "What's all this for, Jake?" she asked suspiciously. Jake had never been good at lying. "I'm helping some injured animals." "What kind of animals need surgical tape and antibiotics?" Claire demanded. Jake sighed. There was no point in hiding it anymore. "The kind with scales and wings." Claire's face went white when Jake told her the whole story. She sat down heavily at her desk and stared at him. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she said. "Unauthorized contact with dragon citizens of the Empire? Failure to report alien presence? This could start a diplomatic incident." "They were dying," Jake said simply. "The babies still might die if we don't get them proper help." Claire was quiet for a long time. Finally, she looked up at Jake. "Show me." That evening, Claire crawled through the tunnel with Jake and Amanda. Her reaction to seeing Kaylin and the babies was similar to Amanda's. Shock, followed by wonder. The baby dragons had grown noticeably stronger over the past week. They could stand steadily now and were starting to play with each other. Kaylin watched Claire carefully, sensing this was someone important. The dragon had learned to distinguish between the humans who helped her and potential threats. "They're beautiful," Claire said softly. "But Jake, we can't keep this secret much longer. The station has regular inspections, colonial authority monitors, our communications. Sooner or later, someone is going to find out." "So what do we do?" Jake asked. Claire looked at the dragon family one more time. We better figure out how to save them before that happens. 3 weeks had passed since Jake first discovered the dragon family, and everything had changed at the mining station. The secret was no longer just Jake's burden. Amanda spent most of her free time studying dragon healing abilities, amazed by how quickly Kaylin's bones were mending. Claire had quietly rearranged work schedules so Jake could make his daily visits without raising suspicion among the other miners. The baby dragons had transformed completely. Ember, Spark, and Blaze were now the size of large dogs, their scales bright and healthy. They had learned to recognize Jake's footsteps and would chirp excitedly when he appeared in the tunnel entrance. Ember had become especially attached to him, often curling up against his leg while he worked on her mother's care. Kaylin herself was a different creature than the dying dragon Jake had first found. Her green eyes were alert and bright, and she could lift her head and upper body easily now. The infected wounds on her legs had healed completely, leaving only scars under her bronze scales. But the bones were still healing, and she could not stand or walk yet. Jake had learned that dragons were far more intelligent than most humans realized. Kaylin seemed to understand much of what he said to her, even though she could not speak human languages. She had developed a complex system of communication using different sounds, head movements, and even the way she positioned her wings. When Kaylin was pleased, she made a low, rumbling sound like a giant cat purring. When she was worried about her babies, her wings would spread slightly and her eyes would focus intensely on them. When she wanted Jake's attention, she would tap one claw gently against the tunnel floor. Jake had also learned that dragons had strong emotions and deep family bonds. Kaylin clearly loved her babies with a fierce devotion that reminded Jake of human mothers he had known. She would spend hours grooming them with her long tongue, teaching them things in the dragon language that sounded like musical growling. But there were still mysteries. Jake often wondered how Kaylin had ended up alone and trapped in the tunnel. Dragons were supposed to live in large family groups that protected each other. Why had no one come looking for her? Why had she been so far from other dragons when she was ready to have babies? Sometimes Jake caught Kaylin staring into the distance with sad eyes, as if she was remembering something painful. When this happened, the babies would press close to her and make soft, comforting sounds. It was clear that this family had been through something difficult before Jake found them. The breakthrough in their relationship came when Jake brought a portable music player to the tunnel. He had been working on installing better lighting so Amanda could examine Kaylin more easily, and he played some classical music while he worked. Kaylin's reaction was immediate and surprising. Her eyes widened and she lifted her head high, listening intently to the music. Then she began to hum along, her voice creating harmonies that blended perfectly with the human instruments. The babies stopped playing and listened to their mother sing, their eyes bright with joy. From that day forward, Jake always brought music when he visited. Kaylin seemed to love all kinds of music, but she especially enjoyed pieces with complex harmonies. She would add her own voice to create sounds more beautiful than anything Jake had ever heard. The music sessions became a bonding time for the whole dragon family. The babies would gather around their mother while she sang, and Jake would sit nearby, feeling honored to be included in something so personal and beautiful. During these moments, Jake felt like he was not just helping injured animals, but becoming part of a real family. Amanda made an important discovery during one of her examinations. She had been studying samples of Kaylin's blood and tissue, trying to understand how dragon healing worked so well. What she found changed everything they thought they knew about dragons. "Jake, you need to see this," Amanda said excitedly one evening. She had set up a microscope in the tunnel and was looking at cells from Kaylin's healing bones. Jake looked through the microscope and saw cells that seemed to glow with their own light. They were moving and changing in ways that human cells never did. "Dragon cells can regenerate almost indefinitely," Amanda explained. They have mechanisms for repairing damage that we don't understand yet. But here's the amazing part. These cells respond to emotional states. When Kaylin is happy or feels safe, her healing accelerates. When she's stressed or afraid, it slows down dramatically. This explained why Kaylin had been healing so slowly when Jake first found her, and why her recovery had sped up once she learned to trust him. Dragons needed emotional well-being to heal properly, something that made perfect sense to Jake, but would probably shock the scientists who studied dragons from a distance. Amanda's research also revealed something troubling. Some of Kaylin's cells showed signs of stress damage that went back months, not weeks. Whatever had happened to separate her from other dragons had been traumatic and long-lasting. Jake shared this information with Kaylin during one of their music sessions, speaking to her, as if she could understand every word. He told her that Amanda had found evidence of old pain, and that they wanted to help her heal from more than just her broken bones. Kaylin listened carefully, her green eyes fixed on Jake's face. When he finished speaking, she made a series of low, musical sounds that seemed like language. Then she did something that took Jake's breath away. She reached out with one massive claw and gently touched his hand. Her touch was warm and surprisingly gentle for something so large and powerful. In that moment, Jake felt a connection that went beyond species, beyond language, beyond anything he had experienced before. The babies seemed to sense the importance of this moment. They gathered around Jake and their mother, adding their own small voices to Kaylin's musical sounds. For the first time since finding them, Jake felt like he truly understood what they were trying to tell him. They were saying thank you, but it was more than that. They were welcoming him into their family. That night, Jake stayed in the tunnel longer than usual. The dragon family had arranged themselves for sleep, with the babies curled against their mother's warm side. Kaylin had positioned herself so that Jake could sit comfortably nearby, clearly inviting him to stay. Jake dozed fitfully, waking several times to find Kaylin's great head nearby, watching over him as protectively as she watched her own children. He realized that somewhere along the way, the relationship had changed. He was no longer just helping injured dragons. He had become part of their family, and they had become part of his. But Jake also knew that this peaceful time could not last forever. Colonial authorities' next inspection was scheduled for the following month. When they arrived, they would discover the dragons no matter how carefully Jake and his friends tried to hide them. The question was no longer whether the secret would be discovered, but what would happen to Kaylin and her babies when it was. Jake fell asleep wondering if the bonds they had built would be strong enough to protect this unusual family when the outside world finally came calling. The warning came at dawn. Lisa Hayes burst into Jake's quarters, her face pale with worry. "Jake, wake up! We've got incoming ships, big ones!" Jake sat up quickly, instantly alert. "Colonial Authority?" "Worse," Lisa said. "Dragon ships. 3 of them, and they're huge. Claire's trying to make contact, but they're not responding to our communication attempts." Jake's blood went cold. He had always known this day might come, but he had hoped for more time. Kaylin could walk now with the help of mechanical braces Jake had built for her healing legs, but she was still not strong enough for a long journey. The babies were healthy, but still very young. He dressed quickly and ran to the command center, where Claire was hunched over the communication console. Through the windows, Jake could see 3 massive shapes blocking out the morning sky. The dragon ships were like nothing he had ever seen, sleek and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. "They're hailing us now," Claire said, her voice tight with stress. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what was clearly the bridge of a dragon ship. The being that appeared was enormous even by dragon standards, with scales that shifted from deep blue to purple depending on how the light hit them. His eyes were cold and ancient, and when he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I am Elder Thane Zorian of the Draconic Empire. the dragon said in heavily accented human language. "We have come to retrieve stolen property belonging to our people." Claire found her voice first. "This is Administrator Murphy of Colonial Mining Station Kepler 7. We have no stolen property here. What exactly are you looking for?" "Do not play ignorant with me, human," Elder Zorion replied. "We know the exile Kalen is here, along with her spawn. You will surrender them immediately or face the consequences of interfering in dragon affairs." Jake stepped forward before Claire could respond. "What do you mean by exile? Why was she exiled?" Elder Zorion's cold eyes fixed on Jake. "The breeding failure Kalen was cast out for refusing to abandon defective eggs. Dragon law demands that weak offspring be left to die so that only the strong survive. She chose sentiment over strength and was banished for her weakness." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Those babies aren't weak. They're healthy and intelligent, and beautiful." "You know nothing of dragon ways, human mechanic," Elder Zorion said with contempt. "Kalen's eggs were examined by our finest healers and declared genetically inferior. They would have produced weak adults that would burden our society. By saving them, you have interfered with natural selection." "By saving them, I kept a family together," Jake shot back. "Those babies deserved a chance to live and grow, regardless of what your examinations showed." Elder Zorion's scales darkened with what Jake realized was anger. "Your human sentiment makes you weak. You risk yourselves for creatures that mean nothing to you. This is why dragons are superior. We understand that strength comes from hard choices." Before Jake could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. Kalen herself had appeared on the screen, somehow having connected to the communication system from the tunnel. She stood proud and tall despite her healing legs, her bronze scales gleaming under the lights Jake had installed. She spoke in the deep, musical dragon language, her voice carrying both strength and defiance. Whatever she said made Elder Zorion's eyes widen with surprise and then narrow with anger. "The exile dares to speak of honor," Elder Zorion translated for the humans. "She claims the humans showed her greater kindness than her own people. She says her children are proof that strength can come from compassion rather than cruelty." Kalen continued speaking, and Jake could hear emotion in her voice. She gestured toward the tunnel entrance where Ember, Spark, and Blaze had appeared, their scales bright and their eyes alert and intelligent. Elder Zorion was quiet for a long moment as he studied the young dragons. Jake could see that something about their appearance surprised him. The babies were clearly healthy and strong, nothing like the weak creatures the dragon healers had predicted. "How is this possible?" Elder Zorion said finally. "These offspring should be small and sickly. Instead, they appear vigorous and well-developed." Amanda stepped forward. "Because they were raised with love and proper care," she said. "Dragon healing is tied to emotional well-being. When Kalen felt safe and loved, she could heal properly. When the babies felt secure and cared for, they could grow to their full potential." "Impossible," Elder Zorion said. But Jake could hear doubt in his voice. "Dragon strength comes from overcoming hardship, not from soft treatment." "Does it?" Jake challenged. "Because what I see is a mother who was willing to die protecting her children, and children who grew strong because they felt safe and loved. That seems like real strength to me." At that moment, something unexpected happened. Ember, the golden baby dragon who had always been closest to Jake, began to sing. Her young voice was pure and beautiful, creating harmonies that resonated through both the tunnel and the communication system. Spark and Blaze joined in, their voices blending with their sisters. Then Kalen added her deeper voice to the chorus, creating a song more beautiful than anything Jake had ever heard. The dragon song spoke of love, family, hope, and the strength that comes from caring for others. Elder Zorion listened to the song with growing amazement. Jake could see that the music was affecting him deeply, reaching something in the ancient dragon that his cold philosophy had buried. When the song ended, Elder Zorian was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer than before. "This song, it is one of the old songs, from the time before the Empire became focused on strength alone. I had thought such music was lost forever." "It was never lost," Kalen said in careful, human words, surprising everyone. "It was only forgotten by those who chose hardness over heart." Jake realized that Kalen had been learning human language during all their conversations, understanding far more than anyone had realized. Her pronunciation was careful but clear. "The human Jake showed me that kindness is not weakness," Kalen continued. "He risked much to save strangers. He worked daily to heal us when he gained nothing from it. His strength comes from his heart, not from cruelty." Elder Zorian studied Jake for a long moment. "You are the mechanic who saved them?" Jake nodded. "I couldn't just leave them to die, it wouldn't have been right." "And what do you gain from this rescue?" Elder Zorian asked. Jake looked at the dragon family. Kalen standing proudly despite her braces, the three babies watching him with bright, trusting eyes. "I gained a family," he said simply. Elder Zorian was quiet again, clearly struggling with concepts that challenged everything he believed about strength and weakness. Finally, he spoke again. "I must consider this situation carefully. The Empire's laws are clear, but what I see here does not match what our laws predicted. We will remain in orbit while I decide what is to be done." The communication screen went dark, leaving the humans alone with Kalen and her children. Jake could see that the confrontation was far from over, but for the first time since the dragon ships had arrived, he felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, love and compassion could prove stronger than ancient laws and cold tradition. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of one dragon family, but possibly the future relationship between two very different species. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to the mining station. 3 dragons landed near the main building, their massive forms dwarfing the human structures. Jake watched from the command center window as Elder Zorian approached with 2 other dragons, one wearing elaborate golden ornaments that marked her as a healer, and another whose scarred hide spoke of many battles. Claire activated the external speakers. "Elder Zorian, you are welcome to enter our facility for discussions." "That will not be necessary," the elder replied. "We wish to examine the exile and her offspring personally. We will come to them." Jake's heart raced as he led the dragon delegation through the station and toward the tunnel entrance. Behind him walked Claire, Amanda, and several other station personnel who had learned about the secret over the past weeks. Everyone was tense, knowing that the next few hours could determine whether their unusual family stayed together or was torn apart forever. Kalen was waiting at the tunnel entrance, standing as tall and proud as her healing legs would allow. Ember, Spark, and Blaze flanked their mother, their young faces serious but unafraid. Jake could see that Kalen had prepared them for this moment. Elder Zorian studied the dragon family carefully, his ancient eyes taking in every detail. The healer dragon moved closer, examining the babies with professional interest. "Impossible," the healer whispered in the dragon language. "These young ones show no signs of genetic weakness. Their bone structure is excellent, their scale development perfect, their energy signatures strong and clear." Elder Zorian looked at Jake. "Explain to me exactly what treatment you provided." Jake told the whole story, from finding them trapped and injured to the daily care, the music sessions, the emotional bonding, and Amanda's medical discoveries about how dragon healing responded to emotional well-being. The dragon healer listened, with growing amazement. "You mean to tell me," the healer said slowly, "that these offspring developed properly because they felt safe and loved?" "That's exactly what I mean," Amanda said, stepping forward with her research notes. Dragon cellular regeneration accelerates dramatically in positive emotional environments. Traditional dragon examinations of unhatched eggs cannot account for the impact of proper nurturing after birth. The battle-scarred dragon spoke for the first time. This goes against everything we believe about strength through hardship. Does it, though? Jake asked. Kaylin showed incredible strength by refusing to abandon her children. The babies showed strength by surviving and growing despite being labeled as weak, and all of them showed strength by learning to trust a completely different species. Elder Zorion was quiet for a long moment, then addressed Kaylin directly in the dragon language. She responded with a long, musical speech that brought tears to Jake's eyes, even though he could not understand the words. "What did she say?" Jake asked. Elder Zorion looked troubled. "She told me of the years she spent trying to convince our healers that her eggs were viable. She described the pain of being cast out while carrying young, the struggle to survive, alone, and the despair she felt when the tunnel collapsed and trapped her." The elder paused, then continued. "She also told me about the first time the human brought water to her lips, and how she realized that this strange creature cared more about her children's welfare than her own people had. She said that in this human's kindness, she found the strength to heal and the hope to continue living." Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had known that his care meant something to Kaylin, but hearing her describe it to her own people brought home just how much their relationship had meant to her. Ember stepped forward and began to sing. The same beautiful song that had so affected Elder Zorion during their communication the day before. This time, hearing it in person, the impact on the visiting dragons was even more dramatic. The healer's eyes widened. "That is the Song of Becoming, one of our most ancient melodies. How does a youngling know such music?" "Because her mother taught it to her," Jake said. "Because dragons never forgot how to love and create beauty, even when their society told them to be hard and cold." Elder Zorion closed his eyes as Spark and Blaze joined their sister's song, creating harmonies that seemed to resonate in the very air around them. When Kaylin added her voice to complete the chorus, Jake saw something crack in the ancient dragon's stern expression. "I have not heard such music in over a century," Elder Zorion said softly. "We stopped teaching the old songs when we decided. They made us weak." "Maybe," Jake said carefully, "the songs didn't make you weak. Maybe losing them did." The visiting dragon spent the rest of the day observing Kaylin and her children. They watched the babies play together with obvious intelligence and creativity. They saw how Kaylin had learned basic human language and could communicate complex ideas. Most importantly, they witnessed the deep bond between the dragon family and their human protectors. During one remarkable moment, Blaze injured her wings slightly while playing and immediately ran to Jake for comfort. He examined the minor, cut and applied a small bandage while making soothing sounds. The visiting dragons watched in amazement as the young dragon trusted a human to care for her injury. "This child sees the human as family," the healer observed. "Not as a different species, but as a trusted parent figure." "Because that's what he is," Kaylin said in her careful human words. "Jake saved my children when my own people abandoned us. He is their father now, in all ways that matter." As evening approached, Elder Zorion called his companions together for a private discussion in the dragon language. Jake could see them debating intensely, their voices rising and falling in musical arguments that lasted for hours. Finally, Elder Zorion approached the human dragon family that had gathered near the tunnel entrance. "I have made my decision," he announced. "The laws of our empire are ancient and have served us well, but they were created in a different time for different circumstances. What I have seen here suggests that our understanding of strength and weakness may need to change." Jake held his breath, afraid to hope. "Kaylin and her offspring will not be forced to return to the Empire," Elder Zorion continued. "Instead, I propose something unprecedented. The establishment of this mining station as a neutral zone where our species can learn from each other." Claire stepped forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" A joint research facility, the healer dragon said excitedly, where dragon healing knowledge and human technology can be combined, where our people can study how emotional well-being affects physical development, where we can rediscover the songs and traditions we abandoned in our pursuit of cold strength. Jake looked at Kaylin, who was watching him with those intelligent green eyes. "What do you think?" he asked her. "I think," Kaylin said slowly, "that my children will grow up knowing both dragon strength and human kindness. I think that makes them very strong indeed." 3 months later, the Kepler 442b research station was officially opened by representatives of both the Colonial Authority and the Draconic Empire. Admiral Roy Patterson of the Colonial Fleet and Elder Zorian signed the agreement that established the first joint human-dragon facility in galactic history. Jake stood in the new medical wing, watching Amanda work with dragon healers to document the connection between emotional health and physical healing. Through the large windows, he could see Ember, Spark, and Blaze playing in the courtyard with young dragon researchers who had come to study their unique development. Kaylin approached him, moving easily now that her legs had fully healed with the help of both human technology and dragon medicine. She had grown even more magnificent over the past months, her bronze scales gleaming with health and confidence. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked her. "Giving up your old life to stay here with humans?" Kaylin considered the question seriously. "I gave up a life where my children were considered worthless," she said. "I chose a life where they are treasured. That is not a difficult choice." Through the window, Jake watched Ember teaching a group of young dragon students how to harmonize with human music. Her voice blended perfectly with the recorded orchestra, creating something beautiful that neither species could have achieved alone. Besides, Kaylin added, with what Jake had learned was the dragon equivalent of a smile, "I did not give up being a dragon. I simply learned that being a dragon could include being part of a human family, too." Jake smiled back, understanding that this was exactly what he had always hoped for. Not the loss of what made each species unique, but the discovery that those differences could create something even more beautiful when combined with love and respect. The mining station had become something none of them had ever imagined when Jake first crawled into that collapsed tunnel. It had become proof that families come in all shapes and sizes, that strength can be found in gentleness, and that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when someone simply decides to care about a stranger in need. As the twin suns of Kepler 442b set behind the mountains, Jake Morrison stood with his unusual family and watched the first day end of what he knew would be a remarkable future for both their species.